Talk Money.
Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of Let's Talk Money. I'm your host, Surabhi Upadhyay. Given the absence of a state-sponsored social security system in India, managing and planning a comfortable retirement is perhaps one of the main objectives of our investment journey. On the show today, we discuss the finer details and aspects of retirement planning, and we also talk about a lot of the different options available to build a comfortable retirement corpus. Joining me to do that on the show today are Rajat Chattopadhyay of SBI Mutual Fund and Vishal Dhawan of Plan Ahead Wealth Advisors. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in. It's a really important subject at hand and one that we tend to sort of push back and not think about till we start getting older. And typically, we've missed the bus, so to speak, right, by then. So I want to start by getting opening thoughts from both of you gentlemen on this whole concept of retirement planning. Rajat?
So, retirement planning is a very pertinent topic, and it's not about only, managing money. It is about, pursuing your dreams, your aspirations. Because while, we are working, we all are so bogged down by the routine work. We have a lot of to-do list.
Yeah.
But finally, that gets postponed. So it's only, after your retirement or probably you're nearing your retirement, we always think about, let's, get into the various, aspirations or dreams. So, but, at the end of the day, what matters is that today when we look at, that retirement planning is today so important. But we fail to understand the need of the financial or the retirement planning. Now, today, if you look at the life expectancy is increasing. Earlier, people used to plan only for a 3-year or 5-year kind of a, investments planning or whatever, they had to do. But because of life expectancy going up, now you need to plan for almost close to 25, 30 years. So that is the first point, where I see that, there's not much of thought or not much of importance which is going behind it.
No, that's true. And, let me bring in Vishal into the conversation as well on this point. And Vishal, come in on this. That's exactly what I'm saying, right? Most of our working life, we are just earning. And at best, many of us would have scattered investments here and there. We would have a bunch of mutual funds that we have. And maybe at an aggregate level, we know that, okay, my portfolio is 50 lakhs or 60 lakhs or 1 crore. But I don't know if we sort of dissect it clearly enough and build that retirement corpus within the overall corpus. So let's start there. How do you blend in retirement planning with your overall investments?
So I think that's a really important point, because the way our brain sort of treats our multiple financial goals very often is it uses the same set of monies for all of these goals. So whether I want to, support an education for a child, or whether I want to travel on an overseas vacation, or I want to buy a car, or I want to buy a house. I mean, all of this sort of gets all meshed up. And I think one of the most important things, therefore, is to be able to do some sort of labeling with specific numbers, saying that, okay, these are what I require for retirement. Obviously, Rajat spoke about life expectancy being so important, but there's also the inflation devil that we all have to deal with to be able to sort of meet our requirements. And we need to be able to somewhere also figure out that our expenses are not going to drop as much post-retirement as a lot of us imagine. Because what we will all end up having more of when we retire is time. And very often when we have more time, we end up spending more money because we're used to spending our time with, spending money simultaneously. So I think all of these things to be looked at together when you want to put together your sort of retirement wheel within the overall life picture that you want to create for yourself.
No, absolutely. And that's a scary thought, right? That suddenly you have more time and your expenses are going up because you're catching up on all the great things that you couldn't do while you were working. But you have no income, because you've stopped earning, right? So let's come to the math. And I think it's important to have some sort of a rule of thumb at play or some idea. The calculations, Vishal, how do you decide what is that retirement corpus that I must have by the time I turn 60?
So I think the starting point needs to be to, either look at your own expenses and say that, okay, out of these, literally go line by line. I know it's a very boring item. You need to go through your bank statements. You need to look at your credit card statements, but you need to do that hard work because you need to go through that, look at which of these items at today's cost are going to be at the same level. Let's say, for example, your groceries may not change dramatically when you retire, but there could be other things like, say, a medical provision that could end up going up as you get older. And maybe there is some expenses around dependents, let's say children, which will actually go down when you retire. So you try to create these buckets and say, okay, let's project this forward. Let's apply inflation. Let's not forget lifestyle inflation. You don't want to buy an Android phone anymore, but you aspire to buy an iPhone, for example. So you want to build in the lifestyle inflation element at it as well, and then come to what is that corpus that you will require, which will again support inflation-adjusted costs when you end up retiring. So I think that's the big thing that you need to do. And one of the things that you do want to keep in mind is while you're making this transition, you will want to shift from higher growth and more aggressive assets to more defensive assets. I wouldn't say everything needs to be defensive because then you can't beat inflation, but you need to do some sort of a tapering or a step down approach to how much risk you want to take as you get into your retirement years.
No, absolutely. Take that point completely. Let me quickly ask Rajat. Rajat, do you broadly agree, or is there some shortcut formula? Because like what Vishal is saying is laborious, and you really need to apply yourself and think line by line, how much, if I were 60 today, what would my expenses be? And then add inflation to it, right? But any other formula or rule that you follow?
So, Vishal has put it very, very nicely, and he's explained it, for people to understand it very, with a lot of clarity. I think, as far as formulas are concerned, there are all multiple formulas, right? The most simplest is that, today if somebody is at the age of, say, 20s, so what normally we talk about, that let him, at least do 20% savings of his income. Similarly, if it's 30, he can go up to 30% and so on. If it's 50, he needs to go at least 50%. But overall, I think if you look at, building a corpus of, say, if I take an example of a crore, right? And somebody is at 35, and if he's wanting to, build a real good corpus for his retirement, I think the most important thing is even if he does close to almost like 5,500 rupees for, him to retire at the age of 60. So after 25 years, he'll make a crore of rupees. Yeah. But the wonderful thing is that, if he's starting at, say, age 25, and for him to reach 60, he has 35 years. So for him, he will not be required to, invest close to, 5,500 a month, but he'll be required to invest only 1,500 rupees.
Right. The earlier you start, the better.
Correct. So that is what is important.
Yeah.
And third, there are people which I have seen that, they don't take retirement so seriously. And probably keep deferring things, year after year.
Yeah.
And assuming, somebody starts at 45 and, he needs to, he'll be retiring at 60 and he needs to build a corpus of a crore. Then his, monthly almost an SIP or outgo would be almost like over 20,000 rupees a month.
Yeah.
So this is what the math is in terms of, building the corpus.
So rule number one, you need to start taking early exposure to equities and keep adding to your exposure as your income level grows. We've got that point, absolutely taken it on board. The question now is, what is the route or the vehicle, investment product or vehicle that you will use as you want to build this retirement corpus? The mutual fund world actually does have retirement-specific funds as well. They're called, I think, retirement mutual funds, right? That's pretty much the overall name. The question is, are they really worth your while, or are you fine with your diversified funds, your flexi-cap funds, etc.? And I think this is a good question for a lot of investors. Why bother with a retirement-specific product?
Today, what has happened is that if you look at, people are aware of traditional products, okay? And there is a lot of, because of this awareness, now people have come to know about ALSs, people have come to know about mutual fund. Within mutual fund, they have come to know about diversified equity funds and all the retirement and maybe a solution funds, right? So today, if you look at in terms of the money which has got invested in traditional products, for whatever reason, maybe a tax benefit from government or whatever, today the corpus has been built to a larger extent. Now today, if you look at small savings, today I know the number as of March 23, the number is as high as 18 lakh crores. Okay, small savings. But if I look at PPF, which is almost like 9 lakhs, Okay, which is again March 23 numbers.
Yeah.
Now, government initiated NPS.
Right.
Right, that's a new which has started a couple of
pension
years
scheme,
back.
yeah.
Today, that has grown in the last 1.5 years from 8.98 lakh crores to 13 lakh crores. Okay. Now, the bigger picture is that why these kind of products have grown. It's because of certain incentives which has been given to investors.
Which are tax incentives.
Tax incentives.
Broadly speaking, right?
So it's very important that if we really want to see this particular space to grow, it's important that there should be some kind of an incentive. Let it be carved out of a Section 80C, which is 1.5 lakh crores.
The way you have the ELSS, equity-linked savings
Correct,
schemes, because if
correct.
you want the tax benefit, you need to invest in the ELSS category,
Correct.
not in any other
Correct.
mutual fund category. But, I want to dial back one step further to help our viewers understand how these retirement mutual funds are different from the regular mutual funds. So, Vishal, if you could go to the definition and also the product construct. Do they invest in different types of asset classes? Is there a lock-in? How are they different from the regular mutual funds?
So there are two very broad differences. One is that there are asset allocation choices that you end up making. What I mean by that is you could choose to have a pure equity-oriented retirement savings mutual fund. You could have something which is got a combination of debt and equity, or you could even have things which are very tilted towards debt. Because what could happen is, depending on your risk tolerance and depending on your age, you could end up figuring that something works better for me versus something else. We also need to keep in mind is that people have other retirement baskets that could also be simultaneously getting created. For example, they may be contributing to their EPF, or they may be contributing to an NPS, or they may be adding on to their EPF with a voluntary provident fund. So a lot of this is happening concurrently. So the first decision to be made is essentially, basis my age and basis my risk tolerance, what kind of a retirement mutual fund do I want to really invest in? After you've made that decision, you then need to start thinking about, how do I look at this retirement mutual fund? So the big difference between a diversified fund and a retirement fund is that you end up having a lock-in that comes with a retirement fund. And that lock-in typically is 5 years, or till you reach the age of 60, whichever is earlier. And therefore, one of the things that works in the favor of retirement funds is they are very specific to an end goal. And this particular end goal, unfortunately, is something that gets neglected quite a lot. And therefore, that's the advantage of the retirement fund. It'll keep reminding you that, when you want to upgrade your house, I cannot pull out of my retirement fund because, I might have a nicer house now, but I won't have enough money for retirement. So there's a mental benefit that comes to you. The other thing that works in its favor is the fact that if you opt for the old tax regime, there could be certain tax benefits that come to you under Section 80C. The third thing is, for a lot of investors who are not sure about how their asset allocation should be working, they're able to find a single product which can actually solve some of their problems, at least during certain phases when they're planning for retirement. So I think a lot of this gives the retirement funds a benefit in terms of getting used. The problem on the other side is that this liquidity sometimes can become a bit of a constraint, because what you might find is that you have an underperforming retirement fund, for example, but you can't do anything about it because the money is locked in. Or if you want to do something about it after the lock-in, you have to pay an exit cost, which takes away the benefit of compounding on one side. The second is, because these funds are not as large as other diversified funds very often, they could have a marginally higher expense ratio, or they could even be more expensive, certainly as compared to index funds. So I think there are merits and demerits, and therefore investors will have to be careful when they make their choice on whether they want to have retirement funds specifically being used for retirement, or they want to use a diversified fund towards this goal. But it's very important to label that diversified fund, or a set of diversified funds in their portfolio, as retirement funds. Otherwise, this money will keep getting used for other purposes.
Okay, fair enough. Lots of food for thought there. We do have to take a very quick break. We'll come back on the other side, and then we ask our guests the critical question: diversified mutual funds, retirement funds and the NPS and the good old EPF. How do you get the right balance and the right mix to ensure retirement security? Back with that in just a moment.
Let's talk money.
Welcome back. You're with us on Let's Talk Money, and we are discussing retirement planning using the right blend of mutual funds and perhaps some of the other schemes like the EPF. So, Rajat, that's really my question. Now that we've understood that retirement funds also have a very specific role because they allow you to invest in a disciplined way, what would be the right mix? What would you advise? What would you look at doing personally to build that retirement corpus?
I think today it all depends on the risk appetite of an individual. And when we talk about risk appetite, finally, one can look at investing in a blend of debt and equity. One can invest in equity if he is totally evolved and he understands the market well. So he can go into a more of an equity. But ideally, what we have seen is that that investors today have products like PPF, which they have been investing for years. And that's a corpus which they normally build and they use it after retirement. So that's the first part.
Yeah.
Though it is having a 15-year lock-in and then renewal after every 5th year, then it's all that is fine. But they are building a decent kind of a tax-free kind of a portfolio or corpus. The second, you have the bank fixed deposits, or you have, other than that, you have mutual fund.
Correct.
Now within mutual fund, you have diversified and you have also solution products like retirement.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, like Mr. Dhawan spoke to, he made a very clear kind of a understanding, gave it a very clear thoughts that, that there are options available for investors in terms of choosing either a debt or an equity or combination blend of debt and equity. So the only point for a retirement fund is that it has a lock-in of 5 years.
Correct.
But otherwise, if you look at in terms of if it is an aggressive,
Hybrid fund.
aggressive product, then you are investing almost 80% investing into an equity.
Correct.
And the rest is 20%.
Correct.
Like in our retirement fund, there are 4 variants. You have aggressive, you have aggressive hybrid, you have conservative hybrid, and you have conservative. So it all depends on a customer that whether he wants to go for a conservative or whether he wants to go for an aggressive.
And during the life cycle of that particular fund or product, the asset allocation remains the same, or can it change?
So
it changes, it can change, like in a balanced advantage fund and all. The asset allocation can be very dynamic. But what about this retirement product?
So depending on what an investor chooses, the investment is done in a very similar fashion of investment, not only on the debt side, but also on the equity side.
Correct.
But one has an option once in a year to move it into a different option.
So, Vishal, help us now to build the perfect retirement bouquet. So many options. There is retirement funds, diversified mutual funds. There is the NPS. There is EPF, and there are some of these, insurance products as well, and annuity products. What do you like the most, and how would you, make the bouquet? Let's say if you were to make it for someone like me.
So I think the NPS is a very, very powerful tool, because what it does is it also gives you a very unique tax benefit, which doesn't exist elsewhere. If the employer chooses to contribute on your behalf. And what it therefore does is that, up to 10% if you're in the private sector, or 14% if you're a government employee, when the company contributes as a percentage of the basic plus DA, that actually becomes tax-free, and therefore it defers your tax on that element. And that's very, very interesting, because you don't have that option anywhere else. So I would say that, a lot of people saving for retirement should look at the NPS very carefully because of this unique tax position that exists. The other advantage of the NPS is that, it sort of gives you the ability to get a lump sum when you retire, and you can now choose, when you want to retire, because you can, defer it all the way up to the age of 75 if you want to, and take out 60% tax-free, and then 40% can be annuitized to give you a regular income. So this is a very sort of nice thing for a lot of investors to think about. And therefore, in a retirement portfolio, we think NPS definitely has a role to play. In addition to that, the Employee Provident Fund, because of the fact that, first of all, it happens by default, and the second is that it does end up, feeling very safe for employees, and it's got what I would call a subsidized, higher than normal fixed income rate, because you get the benefit of triple E on it. Your contribution is exempt from tax if you're opting for the old tax regime. You have the interest that you earn up to 2.5 lakhs a year exempt from tax, and then you also have the withdrawal exempt from tax, which isn't there in any other retirement product. So the EPF comes as a part of that, and then you take the choice between a retirement fund if you think that you need the discipline of a lock-in with it, or if you feel that you're able to label well enough and not become indisciplined with using diversified funds, then you use diversified funds. So this combination of NPS plus EPF plus the choice between a retirement fund or a diversified fund is a great combination. Annuities are an option because they protect you from longevity, but the rates of return tend to be low. And also you end up losing access to principal very often. So, unless your portfolio or your retirement pool is large enough to say that, some part of my money I never need to see during my lifetime, I'm just happy earning the interest on that. I think otherwise you'd find it a bit of a struggle.
Okay, all right. That's really helpful advice. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in today. I think it's enough to get us started, at least, on the road to long-term wealth creation in order to ensure our retirement security. Thank you for joining in. And we really look forward to having more of these conversations for more clarity going forward as well. It was great having you in the studios, Rajat. Thanks for joining in. And Vishal, good to have you on the program as well. Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Let's Talk Money. We will see you again with another theme next week.
Let's talk money